Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Reynoldsburg City Council meeting of April the 11th, 2022 to order. The time is now 6:33. I'm Council President Angie Jenkins, and welcome to Council Chambers. At this time, please stand for the invocation given by Council Member Baker. Following the invocation, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody bow your heads, please. Oh, Father God, thank you for this day that you let us live through. And once again, I also pray for those who are going through COVID and other health-related issues, Father God, and we know that your grace will heal them from what is ailing them. And I pray for everybody who's in this chamber and those who are watching online tonight, Father God. And I pray for those who are homeless and those who do not have a meal tonight, that you provide for them, Father God. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant?
Here.
Councilmember Strickland?
Present.
Councilmember Salati?
Here.
Councilmember Peckrell?
Here.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Cotner?
Here.
And Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Next, we have the approval of the agenda. There are changes to the agenda this evening. An additional motion has been added to number 10 motions, item B. Under the Finance and Administration Committee, items 1 and 2 have both been removed. Under number 13, consent agenda for first reading, items 6 and 7 have been removed. Otherwise, the agenda stands approved as submitted. Next, we have the approval of minutes. Approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes for March 14, 2022. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes of March 28, 2022. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Community comments. The community comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for citizens to address council. Citizens may wish to bring matters to the attention of City Council or discuss items on the agenda with the exception of legislation scheduled for a public hearing. Comments related to a public hearing may only be made during public hearing portion of the meeting. The council president will invite speakers to step to the microphone, give their name and address. All remarks should be addressed to council as a whole and not exceed 3 minutes. Are there any comments from the community?
Madam President, I did not receive any in-house comments, but I do have an email comment. This is from Mr. Alex First, 1456 Lancaster Avenue. President Jenkins and members of council, after many years of discussion, I am glad to learn the city is establishing an annual sidewalk program. I am supportive of this effort and appreciate the option for businesses and residents to benefit from the city's economy of scale. If property owners elect to have Reynoldsburg contractors perform the necessary work, please consider offering a method to pay the city directly instead of collecting the fee via lien. Owners may not wish to have their property encumbered in such a manner if it can be avoided. Thank you for your consideration. And that is all comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments from council? Do we have any comments from Mayor Begany?
Yes, Madam President, I have a few for this evening. First of all, I wanted to, in case you missed the announcement last week, talk about our Tomato Festival. It will be here before we know it. Our Friday night musical guest will be Morris Day. With his dynamic dancing and smooth yet gutsy vocals, Morris Day played an essential role in the development of the Twin City dance club sound of the 1980s. A founding member of Prince's band, The Time, in 1981, he remained with the group until 1984 when he launched his solo career. So we look forward to having him on that Friday night. We also have our Saturday night group is Plain White Tees. Grammy Award-winning multi-platinum Chicago quintet will be joining us with spanning 2 gold certificate offerings of All That We Needed and the album Every Second Counts. Unshakable anthems such as the double platinum 1, 2, 3, 4 and the platinum Rhythm of Love, and of course their most popular hit, Hey There Delilah. So that's the late 90s, early 2000s. We are still in the process of locking down our Thursday night entertainment, so we hope to have news from you probably before our next meeting, as well as some of our opening acts as well. So I wanted to provide that update. I hope to see you all there. I also hope to see, I think most of you have RSVP'd for our Community Cleanup Day, which is Saturday, April 23rd from 9 to 12. Thank you for volunteering some of that time to come out here. Also wanted to kind of give you a couple of updates on some things that have happened that kind of took a lot of people by surprise. A lot of residents may have received recently information about their energy aggregate service, Volunteer Energy. Apparently, they went out of business, and no one really knew why or how. We're still kind of figuring that out. But residents were notified about a week ago. We found out a week and 1 day ago that this was going on. So the service director and I are frantically trying to find out to get a kind of a list of interviews with potential aggregate servers moving forward. We hope to have a list of those and interview and try and present those best options to council for not only natural gas, but also our electric aggregate as we move forward. We do have some interesting news later on that I'll wait until we get to item B for a motion, but I also wanted to update you that we have received our street bid programs for East Main Phase 2, as well as our regular street bid program. So those will hopefully be on the agenda at the second meeting in April. We hope to have it once we're finalizing all the dollar amounts to make sure that we, maximize the taxpayers' dollars for our road program for this year. We'll have that out there as well. If you have any questions at any time, obviously feel free and reach out. In the meantime, I turn the meeting back over to you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing. This public hearing portion of the meeting, comments related to either of these two ordinances may be made during this time. Speakers should step to the microphone, give their name and address. All remarks should be addressed to council as a whole and not exceed 3 minutes. Would the clerk please read the ordinances?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 11, Planning and Zoning Code for the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio.
Are there any comments? As there's no further comments, I close this public hearing. There are no additional communications this evening. Next, we have motions. A motion to appoint Deborah Dill as the new Assistant Clerk of Council. A new Assistant Clerk of Council has been hired, Deborah Dill. Deborah, would you please stand? Deborah has worked the past 6 years as a clerk in the Clerk of Courts Department. She is already a seasoned employee for the city and will now shift to council work. We welcome you, Deborah, and look forward to working with you. Do we have any questions or comments from council? May I have a motion to approve this resolution? Councilmember Bryan, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Pacquiao, is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Welcome. A motion to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA, as it relates to the Upper Black Lick Creek flood study. Mayor Begany will speak on this motion.
Yes, actually, I'm very happy to give you preliminary news on this. We all know that we've been working with FEMA and the Ohio Emergency Management Association to secure a grant to do a comprehensive study of our waterways. Late today, we were notified that we need to submit a pending approval of matching funds for the grant. So that's motion is before you today. The grant itself will encompass around $300 and some odd thousand. Our share will be 12.5% of $41,000 and change. We're not appropriating the funds at this time, but this is giving us the permission to say that, yes, we are interested in this grant. And then if we do that, then we hope that we will be awarded the grant. I can't guarantee that we're going to get it, but the impression that we've been given is they're not asking us for matching funds unless they know something that they just can't tell us officially yet. The process that you were given in your packet, or that may be emailed to you later because it came in late, does identify the very lengthy process that it would go through as far as a series of public meetings, a number of months to go ahead and do the studying, the map preparations, everything all the way throughout. And a lot of that will be guided by the community's overwhelming public response and request for information for flooding. So again, those are the things that are there. The hope is at the end of this process, not only will it kind of identify some of the things that are, that we can do on the short-term basis to solve some of these issues. It will also identify some of the long-term solutions throughout the Reynoldsburg community, as this has been an issue that obviously has hit us for really decades. Going back some of the forms that I've seen, you're seeing flooding information going back to the 50s and prior to that. So I do ask for your motion to allow me to proceed in the process this evening.
Are there any questions or comments from council?
Thank you, Madam President. Mayor, thank you so much for even involving FEMA, getting them involved early on in our administration, so we can try to figure out some solutions. So again, thank you and your team for working closely with FEMA and getting them in here, and hopefully our residents will be able to come in and hear some good news or what we can do in the meantime. So thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Did you have a timeline for that, or how long it takes to apply, or the process?
The process itself is you're looking probably between 4 to 6 months, depending on any number of factors, including weather availability, survey work, processing the documents, and then presenting. But again, there are a number of things that they want to do. I think there's at least 4 public hearings that would be scheduled at that time. And like I said, with the public response that we've gotten for this particular issue, I'm sure there will be no shortage of public comment on this.
Right. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve this resolution? Councilmember Bryant, is there a second? Councilmember Strickland? Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have reports. Development, Parks and Recreation Committee, Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Development, Park and Recreation Committee meeting for April 11th, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Councilmember Pacquiao, myself, and you, Madam President. There are 2 items on this agenda. The first item is an ordinance to amend Chapter 11, Planning and Zoning Code for the City of Reynoldsburg. This ordinance has returned to the committee to review the recommendations made by the Planning Commission, Attorney Schick or Director Myers.
Good evening. So there's been a few slight changes from what was passed, or I should say sent from City Council to Planning Commission. The substantive stuff are involving a few different things. One of them, pools. We've got language in there about having fencing around pools for safety. That was not in our zoning code. Other things, we've got language in there about driveways. Right now, there's really no language legislating how you could do a driveway, so you could, put a very large, massive driveway we'd have to approve it because it's not in our code. So there's language in there kind of restricted it really basically to 10-foot space with some other language in there if you have a side entry garage, not just off the front. Some other changes, we've more thoroughly defined right-of-way to be public and private, and also ADUs. We had ADU language in there previously, but we've expanded it from just suburban residential to residential medium in the old Reynoldsburg district. Basically, if you already have an ADU, you want to do an ADU, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to just limit it to SR. So those are kind of the major changes, along with the things that were previously presented, like notice period or defining structured parking or things like that were already presented. So those are kind of the major list of the things that have come back in addition to what was sent to Planning Commission. So I'd ask that you folks move this to the next meeting, unless there are any questions or comments on what's presented.
Is there any questions for Director Myers from the committee? Any from council? Okay, seeing how there isn't any, I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion that we forward this ordinance on to council for a second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, ayes have it. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a second reading. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. What did I miss?
Apologies, I would like to see if we could amend the ordinance from first read to reflect the recommendations from Planning Commission.
All right, well, let's open this back up. I'll bring the ordinance to amend Chapter 11, Planning and Zoning Code for the city of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, back up for another vote. This vote would be to amend the ordinance to reflect the Planning Commission's
Recommendations, yeah.
recommendations. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll take another vote to forward this on to council for a second reading as amended. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. This will now be forward to council for its second reading. The second item on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T for program verification and schematic design for the Bryce Park development, appropriating funds therefore and declaring an emergency. Director Bellman, it's nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too, Chairman Baker, members of the committee. This came before you in February, on February 14th. We've held it for a little bit. We're now ready to move forward with a second read on this and to move it through the process. So if there's any questions that you may have or anything you'd like me to explain.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? All right. I do want to say I'm glad that this is continue to move along. You know as well as I do, projects can sometimes get stagnant and stale, but this one's moving right along. So
We're moving slowly forward. Yes,
Yep,
sir.
as long as we're moving to the ultimate goal. So I will go ahead and make the motion that we forward this ordinance to council for its first reading. Second reading, I'm sorry. Second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, ayes have it. This will be forward to council for its second reading.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As there's no further business for the Development Park and Recreation Committee meeting, Madam President, it's back to you.
Thank you. Next, we have Public Safety, Law and Courts Committee. Councilmember Bryant.
Thank you, President Jenkins. This is the Public Safety, Laws, and Courts Committee meeting for April 11th, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Cotner, Councilmember Pacquiao, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, myself, and President Jenkins. Item 1 is amending the fireworks portion of the code. This ordinance is before the committee as a work session. Attorney Shook.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bryant. This is actually not brought on for the purpose of amending the fireworks ordinance. It is brought on as a work session for the purpose of informing council of how House Bill 172, which was passed last year, impacts the city. House Bill 172, effective July 1st, 2022, does legalize the use of consumer-grade fireworks in the state of Ohio, unless limited by the local government. So it's legal according to the state law on certain specified dates, including New Year's Day, Chinese New Year, Cinco de Mayo, Memorial Day weekend, Juneteenth, July 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Labor Day, Diwali, and New Year's Eve. Our current code and our current Chapter 511 mirror state law, so it just incorporates whatever the state law is. The options available to the council are to leave it as is, legal all hours of the day on those particular days. You could choose to limit it further than just those particular days, or you could choose to limit the times, or you could choose to ban fireworks in the city altogether. So there are a lot of options that are available to the city in response to HB 172, all the way from do nothing or outright ban fireworks. And wanted to be able to bring that on as a discussion item because it's going to go into effect on July 1st. And if council were to choose to go the route of amending Chapter 511, we would probably have to start that process pretty quickly to get through 3 reads and the 30-day referendum period before the law goes into effect.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation or on this matter? Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Thank you, Chair Bryant. I do have a question for Chief Baker. If you could share with us the number of calls that the department receives regarding fireworks or inappropriate use, or neighbors calling to report their neighbors doing fireworks, what type of impact will that be on the department, please?
Yeah, so up to this point, we've had a restriction on certain types of fireworks that were allowable under state law. So most of our complaints will start in early July related to the July 4th holiday. Most of the complaints have to do with the noise that is caused by the fireworks. And we're quite busy. We've had discussions with council in the past about the difficulty of enforcing current fireworks statutes. We have to observe the violation. A lot of times we would have to go onto property. Obviously, the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution restricts the ability for us to enter onto private property without a search warrant. So laws are very hard to enforce through the police department related to fireworks laws. What I would ask that you consider, and I spoke to City Attorney Shook about this matter, is if you considered some restriction, it would be a time restriction. I can certainly understand when our citizens call us related to fireworks, when people are setting them off at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 1 in the morning, as people are trying to sleep. So just a consideration, but most of the complaints deal with the noise aspect of fireworks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Councilmember Cotner.
Yeah, I guess keeping along that same line, I mean, it's hard to make a law that you can't enforce. And we know that they're already going on. We know that people purchase these already, and you're already allowed to do something about it, and you can't anyway. So if we add more restrictions, are we accomplishing anything at all? Is there a value of us even trying to put something else and give you another directive to go out and patrol that you can't even do anything about?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great point. I will tell you, noise ordinances are a little easier to enforce than the actual fireworks laws. If we hear the noise and kind of can pinpoint where that item is shooting off from, we can just enforce the noise ordinance without even touching the firework aspect of it, of illegal possession of fireworks. So it is a little easier. It's still difficult, but it does give us the ability to show up at a property and at least tell them to stop. And then if we hang out in the area and see something else shoot up in the air, we don't need to enter onto a private property to enforce a noise ordinance. Does that make sense at all? And probably articulate a little bit better, because we've had these discussions on ways to kind of address fireworks issues in the city in the past.
Yeah, so interestingly, and perhaps in a contradictory way, this law does not override local city ordinances as it applies to noise. So our noise ordinances still apply regardless of House Bill 172. It's probably close to impossible to set off a firework without violating the noise ordinance in the city of Reynoldsburg. In our prior discussions, it's certainly easier to enforce the noise ordinance because we can apply that to the property owner. We don't necessarily have to see the person who set it off to know who we're going to cite for that. It's not an easy law to enforce, especially when you have, dozens, perhaps hundreds of people in the city setting them off at once, and we don't have the kind of police capability to catch everyone. So it's always going to be a problem regardless of whatever laws on the books with respect to enforcement. It's always going to be very difficult, close to impossible to enforce.
If I could add one statement. When the police do arrive at a house that somebody has made a complaint on, typically we will get compliance when we advise them that we know where the activity is involved, what the law is. Everybody knows what the fireworks laws are. They're purposely violating the law, but actually when we show up there and ask them to stop, the overwhelming majority of the time, they will stop, at least for the night.
And if you then have some reasonable cause to go, let's say there is a big party and maybe that it continues to be an issue, at least if there is another law, you have a little bit stronger cause to be a little tougher if need be?
Yeah, I think some restrictions here, and this is my opinion, and it's up to you to apply these restrictions of a time that is reasonable. We've all been around fireworks around the July 4th, and they seem to continue about a month afterwards. But, certainly it'd be responsible for the city to expect their citizens not to shoot these things off all throughout the night. That's just my take on the use of these fireworks.
And then July 4th is not just July 3rd, 4th. I think you cut another piece of that out when you were reading it. It's the
I'm sorry, you're right.
weekend even leading.
You're right, it's Friday,
So
Saturdays,
it's
and Sundays preceding.
Like it's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
week that you could be battling that. And if you've got a exceptionally patriotic neighbor, you could have a very rough week.
Yeah, well, we do, and when you pull up the calls for the last few years, we are overwhelmed by the number of these fireworks calls. I would expect the same this year. Without explaining our deployment of officers, we're overwhelmed. We've got a lot going on during the July 4th weekend, and not that fireworks and noise is not important, but when you prioritize the types of calls that we have during that weekend, it is on the lower level of prioritization.
And when you get calls on the fireworks, I mean, again, we know people have been using them anyway, but what this new law does is allows for the commercial grade fireworks. It's not just your regular bottle rockets and small things. So these get a little bit more aggressive and louder. So were you already seeing these products anyway? Is this what the problem was anyway? What you were responding to anyway?
Yeah, we're seeing the mortars shoot up out of backyards. Whenever you see something explode and it has a tail to it, that is like one of the mortar-type balls that shoot up out of what looks like a cannon.
Yeah.
So we're already seeing that, yes.
I would note, Councilmember Cotner, that the state legislature defines what they can use as consumer grade. They refer to as 1.4G fireworks, so anything stronger or more powerful than that would still be illegal for consumer use. One other note that I would make is that you're absolutely right that it's already a difficult law to enforce, and we don't want more laws on the books that are difficult to enforce. But there are a lot of people out there who choose not to break the law just because there's a law on the books, and so that it can at least mitigate it to a certain extent. And so to go along with what the chief had indicated earlier, having some type of time restriction on there could at least operate as a deterrent. So perhaps, people can get to sleep at midnight or 1 in the morning.
So I guess for me, I'm kind of wondering, I certainly understand that the enforcement on the fireworks ordinances are significantly more difficult than the noise ordinances. But I guess my question's going to be for you, Attorney Shook. At what point do we look at whether it's enforceable and they have the ability to enforce compared to the needs of residents who may suffer from PTSD or some sort of issues that make these loud noises particularly difficult for some, not to mention many of our four-legged friends around town also have a bad reaction.
Yeah, and I'm not on the receiving end of a lot of these complaints, but my educated guess would be that a lot of the complaints deal with people who suffer from PTSD, animals, infants who are trying to sleep, things of that nature. I certainly think that's something that council should take into account as you decide on whether to take action here. But it's really, the totality here is that fireworks are going to go off in the city, and we have to decide if there's any additional action that we want to take to try to mitigate it, if we think it can be mitigated, or if it's worth mitigating.
So do we have any questions or comments from council on this? Councilmember
I'll
Savati.
just say quickly that I personally would prefer to take a look at our noise ordinance to see if there's any tweaks we can put in there and reference specifically to fireworks or something. Maybe not. Maybe we don't need it. Maybe it's strong enough as is. But that's where I would prefer.
Our noise ordinance is actually very restrictive. The plain language of the noise ordinance, which I don't have in front of me, says that if you can hear something from a property more than 50 feet away from that property, you're in violation of the noise ordinance. I'm not entirely sure that's particularly enforceable or constitutional, but that's currently what our noise ordinance says. It's very restrictive.
And then we could do some advertisement around that, around the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of July, which oddly enough, the particular way 4th of July falls this year is exactly the longest possible time for fireworks, because the 1st is a Friday, and then 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So 5 full days to get it out of there.
Yeah. And any other questions or comments from council?
I have a question.
Yes, President Jenkins.
Do you recall the number of injuries that you may have calls for during this time?
I can't recall the exact number. We typically will have a couple minors. And I can't think of any major injuries we've had. I would expect them to go up with the change in legislation with more people using it. But yeah, it's nothing significant.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Just real quick, what do the police department do if it's coming from Etna Township, when it's out of the city of Reynoldsburg? I've always wondered that.
Nothing.
Okay.
We have any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Cotner.
Do you know of any other, the state legislator gave communities the authority to do this. And, I think the concept is allow these products to be used by people that are maybe out in more remote areas, like the township areas. We're pretty densely populated, and, there's a reason that they allowed municipalities to have some greater authority to restrict. So who has seen or who has done anything so far that you may know of?
I'm glad you asked that question, Councilman Cotner, because it gives me an opportunity to plug our two fine interns here for the city of Reynoldsburg, who you will hear from shortly. I did ask Drew Longerberger and Leah Delancey to look into that specific issue. And they found that University Heights actually passed legislation to completely criminalize fireworks. So the state law will have no impact on their city, and fireworks will continue to be illegal in that city. There are other cities that are considering such legislation, including the city of Mansfield. In addition, the Madison Township trustees are considering legislation in determining whether or not there's anything that they will do to take action on this. But right now, there doesn't appear to be a wave of municipal action in response to this legislation. Perhaps it's because of the later enforcement date. But now that it is bearing down upon us, I think that we at least need to make a decision as a city whether we're going to take action.
Okay, do we have any? Yes, Councilmember Peccarell.
May not be enforceable, but I think we should have something in place. I feel for the people, those of animals in the house, and this is definitely it's a big difficulties for the young children, infants and all, but when the animals are there, there's people that are really, really suffering so much. And I think having something in place, maybe a noise ordinance or with the fireworks something, at least we'll have something to stop or something to reduce at least.
Yes, Councilmember Strickland.
Thank you, Chair Bryant. So my recommendation would put some time constraints on when fireworks can happen. I will offer up 9 o'clock as a time for restraint. And so if anyone else have any, comments regarding that.
I would ask Attorney Schick if maybe we could take a look at the current noise ordinance as it exists today, and maybe do a follow-up discussion at our next council meeting, so that we can have a better understanding as to where we are already with our noise ordinance, and then figure out from there if we can do something or if we need to do anything to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I do want to kind of play out the timeline on this. So July 3rd may seem like a long way away as we sit here on April 11th, but when we're talking about 3 reads and a referendum period, and I am loath to pass any type of codified legislation by emergency, we would probably have to move pretty quickly, as in first read at the next meeting. We could certainly amend it between first and third read to play with it a little bit. But if there's something that we wanted to put on, we would probably want to at least get started with a first read next meeting.
Okay, well then, in that case, I move that we bring this back to committee for further, I'm sorry, not for further discussion, but for a first reading at our next meeting. And if Attorney Schick, you could get some sort of analysis for us as to what our options may be.
I think what I'll do is just in response to Councilmember Strickland's suggestion, begin drafting time restrictions and put those on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah, if we can have that in comparison with what the noise ordinance is now.
I can.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Can I
Do
say
we have
one
anything
thing?
else? Councilmember Cotner.
Just kind of going on the time issues, 9 o'clock's probably too early, I think, in the summer. It's barely dark at that point, so I think, I think, is it feasible to do, again, even because there's holidays that are stretched throughout the calendar year even on that. And I'm just kind of thinking that perhaps even the July could be 10 or 11, and New Year's Eve, obviously, probably stretching it to 1 a.m. or something along those lines, as annoying as that may be. But if we're going to allow it, then I think we have to have some reasonable expectations of what that would look like. So I think different time constraints based on the season and the holiday would also be worth considering that as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, on holidays like July 4th, you may want to use like sunset as a guide on, and so much time after sunset. So once there's sunset, you have half hour, 45 minutes to celebrate, and then they have to be over by then. Because you're right, nightfall's going to play into that, right, when people fire off their fireworks. So that's a good point.
Well, I'm afraid that might get into the weeds a little bit too much, because
Well,
then you have to
sunset's
rely on the
publicized.
National Weather Service.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll go ahead and put something together, and I'll correspond with Chair Bryant on the language. That way, if there's any changes that you would like to make before it gets brought back, we can make those changes. That way, when we come back for our first read, it's going to be still a rough draft, but closer to a final product, and then we can discuss how to get to that final product.
Sounds like a plan. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? All right, so let's try this again. I move that we bring this back to committee for a first reading. Do I have a do we have a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. As there's no further business before the Public Safety, Law, and Courts Committee, I return the meeting to you, President Jenkins.
Thank you. Next, we have Public Service and Transportation Committee. Councilmember Strickland.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the Public Service and Transportation Committee meeting for April 11, 2022. Members in attendance are Councilmember Codner, Councilmember Lawson Rowe, Councilmember Pacquiao, myself, and President Jenkins. Item number 1, an ordinance to establish Chapter 703, Single-Use Plastic Restriction of the Codified Ordinance of the City of Reynoldsburg. This ordinance is back before the committee for another work session. Attorney Shook.
Thank you, Chair Strickland. Just to give some background here, because this is a proposal that contains some complex policy considerations as well as complex legal considerations, the mayor and I decided that we were going to give to the high school interns here in City Hall the project of presenting to the mayor, myself, and the council president arguments both in support and in opposition to this proposal. A few weeks ago, Leah Delancey, who is the intern for the city attorney's office, and Drew Longerberger, who is the intern for the mayor's office, made those arguments in here. Drew Longerberger presented in opposition to the ordinance, and Leah Delancey presented in support. That was based on a coin flip, not based on where either of them personally stand, although I think it's probably close to where they personally stand. For tonight's purposes, and as a reward for how well they did with their presentation before President Jenkins, Mayor Begany, and myself, we felt they were well equipped and definitely more informed on this topic than just about anybody else in City Hall to be able to present their research, their findings to this council so that you can take that research and findings into consideration about whether this is something that council would want to push forward as legislation. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to the city attorney intern, Leah Delancey.
Hello, Council, and thank you for having me. As Mr. Shook said, my name is Leah Delancey, and I'm an intern from Reynoldsburg High School with the City Attorney's Office in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak today on the topic of single-use plastic restrictions in the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio. I will begin by discussing the environmental impacts single-use plastics have on our environment, as well as the environmental impacts any alternatives may have. So single-use plastics are made from fossil fuel-based chemicals. Fossil fuels produce extremely high quantities of carbon dioxide, becoming trapped in our atmosphere, leading to global warming. It is estimated the production and incineration of plastic products produces over 850 million metric tons of greenhouse gases per year. Single-use plastics are primarily produced to be used once and thrown away. So where does our single-use plastic go when we are done with it? Well, roughly 79%, or 6.3 metric tons of single-use plastic has accumulated in landfills and our natural environment worldwide. Furthermore, environmental studies by the United Nations Environmental Program explain that once single-use plastic breaks down, it does not disappear. Microplastics form and can be inhaled, accumulating in the organs. The latter half of this study examined the effects of microplastics on pregnant women and newborn babies, in which microplastics remains were found in the placenta of a woman after birth. With that said, instituting a single-use plastics restriction in the City of Reynoldsburg would dramatically decrease plastic waste and protect the quality of our environment. I understand Reynoldsburg is a much larger city than, say, the city of Bexley, in which recently also instituted single-use plastic restrictions. However, as stated by the Ohio State University's College of Environmental Science research on plastic bags in stores, results from various research methods concluded that almost all respondents, quote 95%, are in favor of legislation reducing unlimited access to plastic bags. It is evident that people want to reduce their consumption of plastic materials, but they do not know where to start or how to go about the process. Another important factor to note is that single-use plastics is very simple to produce. There is less material involved in production, and it is quite simple to collect the material and easy to manufacture, which hints as to why plastic bags are so cheap. Now, what are some alternatives? We can work toward instituting paper and reusable bag distribution in stores instead of plastic bags. Paper bags can be reused and are biodegradable, which means they are easily able to break back down into the environment. and do so much quicker than plastic bags, which can take around 450 years to decompose while emitting harsh chemicals into the environment and clogging sorting machines in landfills. Furthermore, reusable bags could provide advertisement upon purchase, possibly leading to an increase in shoppers and sales at a given business. Wooden cutlery can replace plastic cutlery in places like schools. Like paper bags, wooden cutlery is biodegradable and compostable and can be washed and reused. Though with that said, in order to keep up with the demand of wooden cutlery, there would need to be that many more trees cut down. Plastic straws are a big issue regarding wildlife, particularly when carried into the ocean, affecting marine life. Most coastal locations have already instituted paper straws in lieu of plastic straws because they are also biodegradable and compostable. I want to also discuss possible environmental impacts that the production of paper and reusable bags would have. The initial production of plastic bags is much less impactful than paper and reusable bags on the environment. Paper bags, on the other hand, must be reused 3 to 4 times to be better for the environment than plastic bags. The positive to paper, though, is that it is easily able to break back down into the environment through biodegradation and is compostable. Other uses could include carrying your groceries, collecting recycling, packing and securing belongings when you're moving, and or using as a gift bag. Reusable bags also take quite a bit of work to produce. However, reusable bags are produced to be sustainable for an extended period of time, thus reducing the amount of production needed compared to plastic or paper bags, and decreasing overall litter. Also, as I previously stated, reusable bags from stores specifically provide advertisement upon purchase. Now, as I close out today, I want to mention the fact that there is a cost difference. For example, plastic bag production costs about 1 cent per bag, whereas paper bags cost around 4 cents per bag. But the disposal of these alternative products is much easier on the environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, members of council. My portion of the presentation will go over the specific policy issues, specifically the economic impact on those businesses, the effectiveness of the ban, and the enforceability. So let's start with our businesses. Stores would be prohibited from distributing all single-use plastics, either that be bags, straws, containers, or other such cutlery. And since businesses are the backbone of this community, I wanted to get an understanding of how they would be impacted. And so I went around City Hall and I talked to a couple of business owners, and one particular store stood out to me, and that's the Kamana Grocer that's right across the street. I talked to the owner and I asked him, about how much do you spend on paper bags or let me mention that the only plastic that he distributes are single-use plastic bags, so that's what we had our conversation about. I asked him about how much a year do you spend on those plastic bags, and he said about $6,000. Now, that's a pretty significant chunk of change, $6,000 on a product that he can't make a profit off of, but that's okay because all he has to do is switch over from plastic to paper alternatives. So, but the problem is that paper costs about 5 to 10 times as much as plastic bags, so that $6,000 that he spends every year just turned into $30,000 to $60,000 a year. To put that into perspective, that's the same cost as a full-time employee making $15 an hour. And I did ask him, have you ever considered switching over from plastic bags to paper bags? And he said yes, but he wouldn't be able to afford it. So these businesses do want to make that switch. It's just the cost burden that's the largest hurdle that they have to get over. Schools are also a part of this ban. It says no educational institution shall provide, distribute, or sell various single-use plastics. And every single student, whenever they eat lunch, is distributed single-use plastic, like the ones that I have here in my pocket, to eat their lunch. And so if we were to ban plastic forks, we would have to, or the schools would have to buy over 22,000 forks, knives, and spoons to distribute all of their students. So cutlery also tends to go missing, either from it being stolen or from it being thrown away on accident. And so buying cutlery is not, or the metal cutlery is not a one-time purchase. There was a school district in Connecticut that switched from plastic over to metal, and they reported that they lost about 40 pieces of cutlery per month per school. And that also means that the schools would have to constantly replace that missing silverware. So purchasing utensils is not the only expense involved in this switch. The school's cafeterias do not currently have the capability of washing that quantity of item since they happen to not have any dishwashers in their facilities. Since there's not necessarily a need for those dishwashers, since the few pots and pans that they do use to cook the food is all washed by hand. Moving on to the next topic, we're going to talk about effectiveness. In other words, does this legislation truly make a difference? And to demonstrate the effectiveness of this ban, I'm going to do a little demonstration. And before I do, I want you to keep in mind that this ordinance only applies to things that are establishments that fit under the store definition and does not apply to public eating establishments or other restaurants. So here I have 2 spoons. They're made by the same manufacturer. There's just an obvious color difference between the 2 of them. This one was from the UDF over off of Broad Street, and this one was from Culver's down the road. This one would be banned, this one would not. Same thing with these 2 straws. One would be banned, one would not, because one came from a store and one came from a restaurant. So my point is this: if we're trying to eliminate our plastic within the city, why are we still allowing some establishments to distribute single-use plastics and not others? So I suggest that is something that council should look at, whether or not applying this evenly across the board or just trying to reduce plastic in general. And so moving on to the third thing, and probably the most important thing, is enforceability. Bexley has not used, so we're using Bexley as the example of this. So Bexley has not yet used their enforcement mechanism. And that is a very simple reason why they haven't, is because they only have 2 businesses, which is a CVS and a Giant Eagle. And both of those businesses have the ability to pay 5 to 10 times as much on paper bags. And in fact, both corporations are willing to switch over and comply with that ordinance without the need of a ban. It's a corporate policy now that they distribute paper bags. Since Bexley has already implemented their ban and worked with their businesses, I wanted to reach out and see what that transition was like. And I found 5 more businesses that would fall under that store on top of the 2 that are already within Bexley. And I did ask them, what was that transition like? Are you still using single-use plastics? And do you know about this ban? Well, 4 out of 5 of those businesses are still using plastics and don't know that the ordinance exists. There's also 1 more major establishment that does not comply with Bexley's code, and that's their city schools. While I was doing the research on the school portion, I called their administrative building and I asked them what was that transition like, what was the cost and everything. And the lady kind of sounded like she was looking at me crazy because she didn't know the ordinance existed either. And so the biggest part of the legislation is the education aspect. As I mentioned previously, Bexley is still having a hard time, a very difficult time getting all their businesses and establishments to comply with this ordinance and involved in this ban. Because they simply don't know about it. So Reynoldsburg would have to outreach or reach out to the businesses a lot to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And we would also like to educate our residents about recycling and bag drop-off locations that are most likely at every single store, just to make sure that single-use plastic is disposed of correctly. With all of that being said, I appreciate you taking the time, and I highly encourage questions if you may have any.
So thank you, Mr. Drew, and also Ms. Leah for presenting in front of council this evening. So thank you. You both did a wonderful job. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Council.
So the last time we were talking about this here in council, Attorney Shook mentioned the issue of home rule possibly being an issue if we were to try to implement something like that here. Either one of you have any?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What do you have?
So the state statute, Ohio Revised Code, Section 715.013, Part B states, quote, "No municipal corporation may impose any tax fee or assessment or other charge on auxiliary containers." So to be in compliance with the state statute, we are not allowed to impose a tax fee or assessment for auxiliary items. We can impose a fine, however, because we differentiate a fine versus a tax fee and assessment due to the fact that taxes, fees, and/or assessments are not meant to punish citizens. They are simply debts you pay due to the fact that you live in a community in which requires compensation for the services that they are providing you. A fine, on the other hand, is a punishment for committing an unlawful act. Unlike taxes, fees, and assessments, you are not required to pay a fine so long as you are in compliance with your municipality's ordinance.
So if you were going to wave a wand and put an ordinance in place, how would you like to see it implemented?
Well, that's the magic of you guys, I guess.
That's why I'm asking you.
But if we wanted to institute an ordinance in the state of Reynoldsburg, it has the possibility to be enforced.
Okay.
So it's really, I guess, your decision. But you can do it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Council Cotner.
I think just comparing Reynoldsburg to Bexley continues to be a anomaly that's, not really feasible. I've been in that Giant Eagle, and, they're the ones that enforce it. I don't know when their law passed and when I was in there, but they've been trying to do away with plastic for quite a while. So, I think it's great for a business that says we can afford to do this, just as you mentioned. There are businesses that can and will afford it, and I think that's great. I think as much public education that we can try to do and individual responsibility to limit things is great. I think it's really an enormous task to put this on businesses in the community right now, but I think to find a way to keep going forward with community and public education would be a wonderful resource that we could have. So that's just my opinions on where we are right now. But aside from that, to both of you, great job. Thank you for all the work you did and communicating to all of us so well. So thank you both, and great job on that tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Bryant.
In the research, did you look at any place other than Bexley, or was it strictly a comparison with Bexley?
I looked at Cuyahoga County as well, and they were having massive amounts of issues with their implementation. I tried to reach out to them and with their legal team and ask them if they were enforcing it all, but nobody has reached out to me about it. Bexley was being the only person that I've been able to actually have a conversation with about this.
Did you find either one of those places do any sort of tax credit or benefit to the business to perhaps stop using the single-use plastic?
I believe Bexley has a grant application available where they reimburse businesses for $1,300. I believe I think it's every year. I might be wrong about that though. But they did have a grant program in place to try and help reduce that cost of switching from plastic to paper.
And that was funded by the city?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Pacquiao.
So thank you. This is something I really like it, but I think it's a big challenging in looking at the business side. But in your research, you've mentioned that how the plastics impacting the health of the individual. On the other side of it, if we were to switch to the paper, what will be the impact on environment, because we'll be cutting more trees? So have you done have you seen from that side?
So there was a research study that combined 26 different environmental impact studies. I think it was by the Columbian Climate Institute that said the production of paper bags costs 50 times as much water pollution and 70 times more air pollution than the production of plastic bags. So as Liam had mentioned, you would have to use a paper bag 4 or 5 times to offset that carbon footprint as production of a single-use plastic bag.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question,
Yes,
Chairwoman.
Councilmember Bryant.
My question is, in Bexley, not in Bexley, is some other entities, do they have it where you go to the store and they have recycle your one-use bag receptacles to where you could just put them in there when you come back? And if so, trying to push more for that will be a little bit better than trying to force a ban or force a fee on a business, especially a small business. Now, some of your bigger businesses like CVS, Giant Eagle, and Kroger's, they can get away with doing that, but a lot of your smaller businesses might struggle to do that. And kind of like promote that, because from what I'm understanding is we're kind of getting away from responsibility of the individual to step up and go that extra mile to recycle the bags instead of just putting it in the trash can and stuff like that. And so try to help promote something along those lines that is a little more economically friendly for small businesses. I just say, no, we can't do that, or we can't switch over to paper.
Yeah, that's definitely a good possibility. I know Meyer has those where you can take your plastic bags and put them. I also think Kroger does. I'm not 100% sure. I know Meyer for sure. But yeah, that's definitely, I think the most important thing is education. Getting the word out to people, encouraging them to take their plastic bags, to not throw them in the trash. I think that's the most important thing, whatever we do going forward.
In other words, my little thing that I've been passing around the city when I've been doing research is don't legislate, educate. And so I just think it would be better if we educated instead of legislating this.
And I agree with you, because just talking to people, a light bulb will go off in their head and like, oh, I never thought about that. You're right. Instead of just assuming people just are not going to do it. Assumption is the mother of all screw-ups, my personal opinion. But by the way, good work on both of y'all. I know y'all put a lot of hard work into this, and it does show. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. A lot of hard work.
Councilmember.
That's fine. We'll clap a bunch
Wait a
of
minute,
times.
yeah.
That's fine. I just had a quick question that goes along with what we've just been saying. So since you guys were doing a lot of searching on this, out of curiosity, did you come across any cities that did an effective job educating and or had effective programs for recycling you may not have, but I'm just curious if anything popped up in your Google search.
I know there have been multiple charitable organizations that have tried to promote recycling, not specifically in a city, but just as a whole. It's the same people that are providing the bins at the grocery stores that you can drop off your plastic bags at. I can send you multiple organizations if you would like that to reach out to them, who actually take that initiative to promote recycling within within communities.
Thanks.
Now we can give them a round of applause. Thank you both. I'm going to ask the committee members, would we like to go back to the committee or should we move forward? Do we need further discussion? Okay. What I would like to do then, I'm going to head and I will move back to committee for further discussion. Maybe then we can come back and be able to move and have a first reading. So is that okay, committee members? All right. Again, I will go ahead and move back to committee for further discussion. Thank you. Item number 2, in ordinance to accept an unrecorded deed of utility easement 0.011 acres from J Max LLC and declaring as an emergency. This ordinance is being requested as a single read emergency. Attorney Shook will speak on, are you going to speak on this, Attorney Shook? Or should we have?
I'm more than happy to let Director Dorman speak on.
Okay, Director Dorman.
I will gladly go. So this was if you remember, a few months ago, we presented several different ordinances along Main Street. This is a section between Davidson and Jackson where we're doing the Main Street Phase 1 improvements. This was an easement on the address there. It's at the chiropractor's office there next to, I think, Vic's Pizza, fairly close to Vic's Pizza. When we decided to bury the utilities, there's a utility conduit sweep that comes through the corner of this property. We were not able to finalize it until we got AEP's final alignment, which we did recently, and the chiropractor's been more than willing, a great participant with us, and signed the easement, and the utilities are in place. So this is basically to record that easement that the city now has.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this legislation? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council as a single read emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council as a single read emergency. Item number 2, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuance costs of 2021 for collection by the Franklin County Auditor. Director Dorman.
Yes, so this ordinance, as well as the next one we're going to look at, these are the quarterly nuisance invoices we receive. So basically, when we go out and cite a property owner who is unable to comply with code enforcement rules and regulations in the time frame given to them to remedy a situation, we will have a contractor go out and do that work ourselves. Basically, this is more or less trash that's in the right-of-way that's left when they do a set-out or things like that with a landlord. We will go out and have that done, grass getting mowed. That's typically mainly what this is all about. We don't really get much more involved than that. This is basically, we send that to a contractor, we invoice the residents, they have so long to pay that. If they don't pay it, then we basically just assess the property.
Thank
And
you.
we have to do 2, Franklin County and Licking County, so we do 2 different ones. We would do it for Fairfield as well, but we have no nuisance abatements for Fairfield County this quarter.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 4, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuance costs 2021 for collection by the Licking County Auditor. Director Dorman.
Same exact thing, just applies to those residents that reside within Licking County.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 5, an ordinance to certify special assessment for sidewalk repair and replacement costs incurred by the city of Reynoldsburg in 2021. Director Dorman.
Yes, so as council remembers, it was around this time last year that we introduced our first ordinance regarding our sidewalk maintenance and repair program. That is a program that we literally just kicked off last year. What we do is, as we go through each year and do any kind of street improvement projects, we also evaluate the sidewalks on those sections of street that we're doing. That way the contractor's mobilized, he's in the area, the cost is considerably less in doing it that way as opposed to kind of jumping all around the city. We do still, on a complaint basis, if someone does call in, code enforcement will look at those individually outside of this area and will respond accordingly to the resident and have them remedy this situation as well. So once again, this year, we're doing the sidewalk program. We're going to provide some different options this year. We will provide what they call slab jacking, is where you can pump the sidewalk panels up to. We will have a contractor bidding on that as well. It's considerably cheaper to the property owners. It's not so much an issue here. Typically, what you'll see in a lot of older areas is where tree roots will cause the sidewalks to heave. We don't have a lot of street trees, so that's not so much an issue here. But this solution will be a better option in regards to cost and getting in and getting out in a cleaner way. Just to address Mr. First's comment too, which was great. I was glad to see his comment earlier about supporting the program. But I did want to mention that as soon as we get an estimate, we actually send a letter out. So every single property owner last year was notified, probably within June or so of the year before we do the work. They have 30 days to pay the city directly if they want to pay us. If they don't pay us, we will send another notice out. At that point, if they don't, we go to this point, which is basically where we do the assessment. It's through 2 installments through their property tax bill, and then we will send these to both Franklin and Licking County. They like the data differently. So although you have a spreadsheet showing that, we will send it to each county individually for the assessments. And I want to say, actually, surprisingly, We didn't have a ton of sidewalk work that we did last year. However, most people actually did opt to pay, and we received most payments were either mailed in or dropped off to the city. So these are the only remaining people that did not pay.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Councilmember Cotner.
Thank you. And so again, these are, the first contact is to give them the option to fix or repair themselves with their own contractor, or say, nope, city take care of it, you're good. And then if the city does, they can pay they write a check to City of Reynoldsburg and
Correct.
That way. Okay.
And honestly, up until this point, they can pay us. So even though we sent them the initial invoice with 30 days to remit, I mean, they could have basically almost the whole year to pay us. It's not until we actually pass this and it actually gets sent to the county that's out of our hands.
And so with these, there's quite a few in the legislation we see tonight. Were any of these property owners ones that questioned or complained about the process, or did they just not pay? Or do you know that information?
Yeah, I'd have to check and see. I mean, anyone that did complain or and I wouldn't say even really complain, had a question, we would have a scheduled meeting with them to meet with our inspector, and our inspector would go out in the field and talk to them about it, and we would, evaluate the panels at that time.
I mean, some of them are pretty good amounts of money and challenging for homeowners. So, again, it is what it is. I just kind of wondered how the response really was and what these folks particularly might have been. So,
yeah, it's surprisingly, the response was very favorable. I mean, I was expecting a little bit more, a little more confrontation regarding this. I think the one thing to understand too is because this has never been done, and honestly, most of the property owners have probably not. Some property owners have went out and done their sidewalks, but every year, if you go back and it's going to be less and less. I mean, the first time you go through, there's always a lot. As long as people maybe start to keep up with their sidewalks now, or we're out there enforcing this, hopefully, as we continue this program, the numbers will get less and less. It's interesting, some people actually ask if they can have, I was actually met out with, one day I went out and literally met with maybe 5 or 8 property owners at the end of the program just to, go through some issues with them. Most of the people I met with actually asked if they could have more panels taken out and just fixed, because they would rather have the whole area done and cleaned up than 1 or 2, and if 3 or 4, when a couple other ones were looking kind of on the margin. So, pretty good program.
Director Dorman, how are the residents being notified that this work is about to happen in their area?
So, we send out the letter, like we said initially, with the estimated amount and then also an inspection sheet that goes with it. Prior to the work, the contractor hangs door tags on everyone's door and lets them know the work's going to occur.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Councilmember Peckrell.
So first of all, thank you for bringing this program. Sidewalk is very important. I think you're doing all things to communicate with the members of the communities through different channels that we have. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we are telling. So I think that thing's been taken care of.
Yes, appreciate it.
Any questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Bryant.
So if I understand correct, there's certain areas that are being worked. What if you've got somebody that's outside of that area? Can somebody call in and say, I want to do this?
They can. We refer them to our contractor. It's ultimately up to our contractor if they want to take on the additional work. Honestly, with things being as busy as they are, a lot of contractors, it depends. I mean, if it's close, maybe around the corner, they might go ahead and take care of it. But typically not if it's just like one panel, somewhere remotely in the city where they're not being already mobilized.
Okay.
But we always will give them their numbers, they could call them. So, and then if not, we also will give them a licensed list of contractors within the building department too.
All right, any other questions? Comments? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first read. Item number 6, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to implement an annual sidewalk inspection, repair and maintenance program 2022. Director Dorman.
Yeah, so basically, this is the same legislation we passed last year, just referencing this year and the ability to assess the property owners going through the same process we're going through now. I think there was an exhibit also attached with a map showing the streets. Now, obviously, as the mayor mentioned earlier, we are still vetting all the numbers that came in. It was Friday we opened the bid, so our engineer's still doing the review of the bid tab to make sure all the numbers are correct and consistent. But hopefully, moving forward, we're going to hopefully get a lot of streets done this year. One thing, too, also on there was the Graham Road Trail that'll go over to the 5 corners with the bridge that we're working with the county on, too. So received lots of bids, so we'll see how that goes.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lawson Rowe. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. Item number 7, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept public infrastructure associated with the Laurel Bluff Development Project. Director Dorman.
Yes, so once again, maybe a month or so ago, we brought you the MI Home Spring Hill project where the city, once the infrastructure is all in place, the contractors performed that work and we've inspected it, then it's the city's job to then formally accept the infrastructure and then start taking the maintenance responsibilities over. Laurel Bluffs was the project, if you're not familiar with it. It's the apartments and condominiums that are just north of the Kroger on Main and Taylor that were just finished recently. They are a master metered community, so there's really not a lot of public infrastructure in there. Everything actually in there is private. The roads, even the water. The water's, once it gets to the right of way, they call master metered. They meter it and they charge their individual units themselves. We bill them for what hits that meter, but then they charge the units individually. The only thing that's really public in this is the sanitary sewer. So if you look at that, it kind of has a breakdown on what we are actually accepting and taking over once this project is complete. It's complete now, but once this goes through the council's process, then we will take that over and be responsible for the maintenance obligations on the sewer.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council? I move we forward this ordinance to council for a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacquiao. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This ordinance will be forwarded to council for a first reading. As there is no further business for the Public Service and Transportation Committee, I return the meeting back to you, President Jenkins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no Finance and Administration Committee meeting this evening. Next, we have consent agenda for emergency adoption. Item 12.1 is part of a consent agenda. This ordinance stands for emergency approval. Unless someone wants to remove this item for further discussion, council will move forward with a vote on this ordinance. Would the clerk please read item 12.1?
An ordinance to accept an unrecorded deed of utility easement 0.011 acres from JMax LLC and declaring an emergency.
May I have a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Councilmember Baker, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Strickland, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Salvati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner?
Aye.
And Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
Madam President, that was 7-0.
This ordinance is approved, 7 affirmative votes and no negative votes. Next, we have a consent agenda for a first reading. Items 13.1 through 5 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a first reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward with the first reading. Would the clerk please read items 13.1 through 5?
1, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2021 for collection by the Franklin County Auditor. 2, an ordinance authorizing the clerk of council to certify nuisance costs 2021 for the collection of by the Licking County Auditor. 3, an ordinance to certify special assessments for sidewalk repairs and replacement costs incurred by the city of Reynoldsburg. 4, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to implement an annual sidewalk inspection, repair, and maintenance program 2022. Number 5, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept public infrastructure associated with the Laurel Bluff Development Project. Items 6 and 7 were pulled from the agenda.
These ordinances stand for a first reading. Next, we have a consent agenda for a second reading. Items 14, 1 through 5 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a second reading unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion. Council will move forward with a second reading. Would the clerk please read items 14, 1 through 5?
1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 11 Planning and Zoning Code for the City of Reynoldsburg, Ohio. 2, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with EMH&T for program verification and schematic design for the Bryce Park development and appropriating funds therefore and declaring an emergency. 3, an ordinance to approve the final plat plan for the Eastwood development. 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Modern Office Methods for the copiers for the police department and waive competitive bidding. 5, an ordinance to amend Chapter 160, Section 160.02A, authorized positions, personnel, classification, and pay grade. A, administration, Section G1, service department, Section 160.02, G4, street division of the city of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
These ordinances stand for a second reading. Next, we have a consent agenda for a third reading. Items 15, 1 through 3 are part of a consent agenda. These ordinances stand for a third reading and approval. Unless someone wants to remove an item for further discussion, council will move forward with a vote on these ordinances. Would the clerk please read items 15, 1 through 3?
1, an ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriated general fund to the police department for donated monies. 2, an ordinance authorizing the city auditor to remove equipment from the city's fixed asset list for the Reynoldsburg Police Department. 3, an ordinance appropriating funds from the unappropriated general fund to accounts in the Community Events Department.
May I have a motion to approve these ordinances?
So moved.
Councilmember Bryan, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Pecoraro, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Savati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner?
Aye.
And Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
These ordinances are approved, 7 affirmative votes and no negative votes. Next, we have other council matters. Does anyone on council have any further items that you would like to discuss this evening?
Oh, sorry, I'm falling apart over here. Just want to say thank you to the men and women. Thank you to the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, and those working in the logistic industry and those working in retail. We're still in pandemic, and they're still working hard, so they still deserve our thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Bryant?
Anyone who is interested in participating in the planning of the city's Pride celebration for this year, there will be a planning meeting tomorrow at 7 at the Panera on 256.
Thank you. Do we have any other items to discuss?
Well, Madam President, you're looking at me, so I feel like I should say something. And I'll talk about Reynoldsburg Juneteenth. The synergy is magnificent. We have several businesses and organizations that have agreed to be sponsors along with vendors. So if there are any businesses or organizations that are interested in participating, space is still available, and you may contact me or the city. Thank you.
Do we have any other items to discuss? Upcoming meetings will be upcoming council meeting, BZBA, Planning Commission meetings. The next council meeting is scheduled for Monday, April the 25th, 2022. The time will be 6:30 p.m. Next, council will be going into executive session and will not conduct any other business following that session. May I have a motion to go into executive session pursuant to ORC Section 121.22 G3 to conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of pending imminent court action.
So moved.
Councilmember Bryant, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Savati, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bryant?
Aye.
Councilmember Strickland?
Aye.
Councilmember Savati?
Aye.
Councilmember Pecoro?
Aye.
Councilmember Lawson Rowe?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotner?
Aye.
And Councilmember Baker?
Aye.
Council invites Mayor Begany, Attorney Shook, Chief Baker, Clerk Prasher to remain in session. Thank you all for coming this evening. Have a good evening.